We are neck-deep in the longest awards season in modern memory. The Oscars formally closed the curtains on our collective adulation of the last year in cinema, an awards ceremony typically held in February or March. But courtesy of a worldwide pandemic, the 93rd Academy Awards were pushed to April 25th. What's more, the Academy saw fit to extend the eligibility window by 2 months, a seemingly merciful gesture to a scrambling industry with ever-shifting release dates, but a maddening wrench in the works for cinephiles curating their best of the year lists. I mean, are these 2020 or 2021 films?
I still don't get it.
Not to mention, this presumably cuts next year's Oscar window down to 10 months, but I suppose we can gripe about all that later. In this video, I'm going to be examining the recently announced 2021 Oscar nominations. But first, a quick overview. David Fincher's Mank led the pack with 10 nominations, followed by a 6-way tie with The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Minari, Nomadland, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7 with 6 nominations apiece. Each of those films were nominated for Best Picture along with Promising Young Woman, which picked up 5 nominations. 2020 saw the major studios pushing back their release dates, essentially paving the way for the major streamers to amass the most recognition. Netflix ruling with a whopping 35 nominations, although technically a couple of these studios fall under the Disney umbrella. Was this merely a symptom of 2020 or the way things have been going for a while now? And speaking of streamers, Small Axe, Steve McQueen's anthology for Amazon and what I consider to be the greatest film achievement of 2020, was completely shut out, because according to the Academy's convoluted rules, it wasn't even eligible. Truly, it's the Academy's loss. While I will be mentioning a few snubs along the way, this video is by no means an exhaustive list of the great films and filmmakers spurned by the Academy this year. For that, stay tuned for my annual Oscar snubs video tribute. You can check out last year's if you're at all curious what that looks like. As for the films and filmmakers that were nominated, overall I'd say the Academy did a respectful job, all things considered. There are plenty of historical first-time nominations that I will be highlighting. After last year's incredible ceremony with Bong Joon-ho's Parasite taking top honors, I wondered whether it was just a flash in the Academy's pan or if it signaled permanent progress. This year's nominees leave me hopeful it's the latter. With those opening remarks out of the way, I'm going to be running down all 23 categories. That's right, 23.
All I could think about was the number.
Longtime Oscar pundits will know we've had 24 categories for nearly 20 years. That number has finally moved, but in the wrong direction if you ask me. I'll explain that change when we get to it. While this is not a prediction video of who will win, I will highlight what my experience and research lead me to believe are the current quote-unquote frontrunners in each category, beginning with Actress in a Supporting Role, and the nominees are Maria Bakalova in Borat's subsequent movie film, Delivery of Prodigious Bribe to American Regime for Make Benefit Once Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. Yes, I'm going to insist on reading the full title. And fun fact, this now holds the Guinness record for the longest title of an Oscar-nominated film.
They're nice.
Moving on, Glenn Close in Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Colman in The Father, Amanda Seyfried in Mank, and Ye Jong-un in Minari. If you've been following the awards season, there's no real surprises here. These were the 5 likely nominees, and this might be the most open race of all the categories, with Bakalova, Close, Seyfried, and Un all very much in the running. Personally, I absolutely love that Bakalova is Oscar nominated for this role. Okay, we need to talk about Glenn Close. Close now has 8 Oscar nominations to her name and ties Peter O'Toole as the most nominated actor without a win. As if that wasn't enough, Close has the rare and dubious honor of receiving both an Oscar and a Razzie nomination for her turn as Mama in Hillbilly Elegy. As I said, Close is one of the frontrunners in this category.
I'm talking about a chance.
But the idea that somebody should win because they've been nominated so many times without winning is nothing but a pity play. My only complaint is that I now have to watch Hillbilly Elegy because I strive to see every Oscar-nominated film. Next up, costume design. We have Emma, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, Mulan, and Pinocchio. Seriously, has anyone even seen Pinocchio? That's not a knock against the film, I genuinely want to see it. Big fan of director Matteo Garrone, I just don't know anybody who has actually seen this film. So if you've seen Pinocchio, let me know in the comments. Anyways, the frontrunner here is Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Next up, original score. The Five Bloods, Terrence Blanchard. Mank, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Minari, Emile Mosseri. News of the World, James Newton Howard. And Soul, Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, and John Batiste. So we've got Reznor and Ross competing against themselves here, and I think they're going to win it for either Mank or Soul, the latter of which is the frontrunner. No love for Ludwig Göransson's tremendous score for Tenet, which Christopher Nolan apparently thought was more important than the dialogue. But what else do you wish was recognized in this category? Which brings us to Adapted Screenplay. Borat's subsequent movie film, Delivery of Prodigious Bribe to American Regime for Make Benefit Once Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. Screenplay by Sacha Baron Cohen and Company. The Father, screenplay by Christopher Hampton and Florian Zeller. Nomadland, written for the screen by Chloe Zhao. One Night in Miami, screenplay by Kemp Powers. And The White Tiger, written for the screen by Ramin Barani. Frankly, I can't believe Borat's here, especially since so much of that film is improvised, and the fact that it's taking the place of a tremendous adaptation like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is downright embarrassing. As far as the frontrunner, that would be Chloe Zhao's script for Nomadland. Now, original screenplay. Judas and the Black Messiah, screenplay by Will Burson and Shaka King. Minari, written by Lee Isaac Chung. Promising Young Woman, written by Emerald Fennell. Sound of Metal, screenplay by Darius Martyr and Abraham Martyr. And The Trial of the Chicago 7, written by Aaron Sorkin. The big notable absence here is Mank, written by Jack Fincher, the late father of director David Fincher, easily one of my favorite original screenplays of the year. Aaron Sorkin's The Trial of the Chicago 7 seems the likely frontrunner at this point, because Sorkin, and it will probably be the biggest award that film takes home. But don't count out Emerald Fennell's fiery debut Promising Young Woman, which is picking up a lot of momentum for this category. Next, animated short film. Burrow, Genius Loci, If Anything Happens, I Love You, Opera, and Yes People. The frontrunner here is If Anything Happens, I Love You, partly thanks to the Netflix accessibility boost, but also because it's a beautiful and heartbreaking film. But I'd be lying if I said anything was more deserving than Opera, an absolute work of art and one of the most incredible animated shorts I have ever seen. And then live action short film. Filling Through, The Letter Room, The Present, Two Distant Strangers, and White Eye. No love for Pedro Almodovar's The Human Voice, and no love for my favorite live-action short of 2020, Jonathan Glazer's masterfully crafted The Fall. But given these nominees, the frontrunners here are The Letter Room and Two Distant Strangers. Next up, actor in a supporting role. Sacha Baron Cohen in The Trial of the Chicago 7. Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah. Leslie Odom Jr. in One Night in Miami. Paul Raci in Sound of Metal, and Lakeith Stanfield in Judas and the Black Messiah. Possibly the biggest head-scratcher of the nominations was seeing both Daniel Kaluuya and Lakeith Stanfield nominated for their performances in Judas and the Black Messiah. Stanfield was campaigned as the lead actor, but at the end of the day, the acting branch recognized him for supporting. Perhaps righting a wrong they saw in the film, as it's been rather divisive how Bill O'Neill, the titular Judas, was in the spotlight more so than the Black Messiah, Fred Hampton. In any case, Daniel Kaluuya is the frontrunner and favorite to win. As much as I love Paul Raci's subtle work in Sound of Metal, who can deny the power of this performance?
You can murder a liberator, but you can't murder liberation. You can murder a revolutionary, but you can't murder revolution. And you can murder a freedom fighter, but you can't murder freedom.
Seriously, just give him the Oscar now. Alright, documentary feature. Collective, Crip Camp, The Mole Agent, My Octopus Teacher, and Time. Well, the documentary branch never ceases to disappoint. In recent years, the likes of Apollo 11 and Won't You Be My Neighbor were cast aside, and this year they failed to nominate some of the best documentaries of the year, including The Dissident, Boys State, City Hall, and my personal favorite, Dick Johnson is Dead. Honestly, that's probably the single biggest snub in my book outside of Small Axe. All that said, no hard feelings against the 5 that were nominated. There are some great docs here. Garrett Bradley's Time is both the favorite and frontrunner among them. Alright, from documentary feature to documentary short subject. Colette, A Concerto is a Conversation, Do Not Split, Hunger Ward, and A Love Song for Latasha. This category is notoriously difficult to predict, but A Love Song for Latasha has the Netflix boost, and they've won this award a couple times in the last few years. Also, don't count out A Concerto is a Conversation, distributed by the New York Times. It's slick, it's swift, and it's very sweet. As with a few of these nominees, you can watch it right here on YouTube. Which brings us to International Feature Film. You may recall this was renamed from Best Foreign Language Film starting at last year's Oscars when Parasite claimed the prize. Each country nominates a single film, and the list is whittled down to these 5 nominees. Another Round from Denmark, Better Days from Hong Kong, Collective from Romania, The Man Who Sold His Skin from Tunisia, Quo Vadis Aida from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I have so many thoughts on this category in general, but for this year's nominees, the clear frontrunner is Another Round. I will point out why shortly. Next is Sound. And this is why the Oscars are now 23 categories instead of 24. Before this, we had separate categories for sound editing and sound mixing. But let's be honest, most people probably didn't know or care about the difference between the two, which is probably why the Academy combined them. As far as professionals in this field are concerned, the reaction was mixed. Okay, the nominees are Greyhound, Mank, News of the World, Soul, and Sound of Metal. If you haven't seen and heard Sound of Metal, I absolutely implore you to do so. It's one of the very best films of 2020, and the sound, its design, its editing, and its mixing adds so much to the experience. Sound of Metal is the clear frontrunner for this category. I mean, it's right there in the name. Next up, production design. The Father, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, News of the World, and Tenet. This is one of Tenet's 2 nominations, and as a bombacious and beautiful sci-fi thriller, I think it has a very good chance. This is production designer Nathan Crowley's 6th Oscar nomination without a win, so he's long overdue to take home a statue. That said, Donald Graham Burt and Jan Pascal's work on Mank is absolutely exquisite. Recreating the interiors and exteriors of Hearst Castle alone was truly awards-worthy. Burt previously took home an Oscar for his work on David Fincher's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which might be a reason the Academy choose to throw a bone Crowley's way instead. This brings us to film editing. The Father, Yorgos Lanthimos, Nomadland, Chloe Zhao, Promising Young Woman, Frederic Thorival, Sound of Metal, Mikkel E.G. Nielsen, and The Trial of the Chicago 7, Alan Blomgarten. While it's not always the case, often the winner of film editing will take home Best Picture, which sticks this flag on the back of Nomadland's van, making Chloe Zhao a quadruple threat nominee as writer, director, producer, and editor, becoming the first woman to ever be nominated for 4 Oscars in a single year. That said, the aforementioned technical feats in Sound of Metal may swing votes its way in this category as well. Next, the most beautiful category, cinematography. Judas and the Black Messiah, Sean Bobbitt. Mank, Eric Messerschmidt. News of the World, Darius Wolski. Nomadland, Joshua James Richards. And The Trial of the Chicago 7, Fedon Papamichael. While Mank's digital black and white cinematography is certainly the most flashy of the nominees, Nomadland's road-tripping vistas are second to none. Seeing this film in IMAX convinced me that it's the only answer here, but how well that will translate to the living rooms of Academy members remains to be seen. Keeping our eyes on the screen, visual effects. I love this category because we see films recognized that wouldn't be otherwise, including Love and Monsters, The Midnight Sky, Mulan, The One and Only Ivan, and that second nomination for Tenet. It's hard to imagine anything beating out the seamless yet mind-blowing CGI scene in Tenet. Next we have makeup and hairstyling. Emma, Hillbilly Elegy, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, and Pinocchio. Mia Neal and Jamaica Wilson are now the first Black Oscar nominees in this category for their work on Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. The transformation of Viola Davis into the nominal Ma Rainey makes it a likely frontrunner. Which brings us to animated feature film. Onward, Over the Moon, a Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon, Soul, and Wolfwalkers. More often than not, Pixar absolutely dominates in this category, and with Soul, what myself and many others feel is among their very best work, I think this is a shoo-in. Next up, Original Song. Fight for You from Judas and the Black Messiah, Hear My Voice from The Trial of the Chicago 7, Husavik from Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga, Eosi, Scene from The Life Ahead, and Speak Now from One Night in Miami. Alls I've got to say is Wuhan Flu was snubbed.
Dr. Fauci, what we gonna do?
Believe it or not, that song was indeed shortlisted as an original song nominee.
Very nice.
But the frontrunner here is Speak Now from One Night in Miami, co-written and performed by Leslie Odom Jr., who plays King of Soul Sam Cooke in the film. I wonder if these will be performed this year. If so, might we get to see Will Ferrell help perform Husavik? Now, on to the final 4 categories. First up, actor in a leading role. Riz Ahmed in Sound of Metal, Chadwick Boseman in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Anthony Hopkins in The Father, Gary Oldman in Mank, and Steven Yeun in Minari. A few historical nominations here. Steven Yeun is the first Asian American, and Riz Ahmed is the first Muslim to ever be recognized in the lead actor category. What's more, at 83 years young, Anthony Hopkins has become the oldest Best Actor nominee. The previous record was held by Richard Farnsworth, who was 79 when nominated for The Straight Story. Have you seen The Straight Story? If not, you should see The Straight Story. It's the only David Lynch film you'll find on Disney+. As far as the frontrunner, this award is a lock for Chadwick Boseman, who we tragically lost last year at the age of 43. This recalls the premature passing of Heath Ledger, who won posthumously for The Dark Knight. Some will undoubtedly argue that Boseman will win as a show of honor and respect, but I'd argue Boseman is absolutely terrific in the role and deserving nonetheless.
Y'all back up and leave Levy alone.
Oh, come on, Levy. We was all just having fun. Toledo ain't said nothing about you. He ain't said about me. You just taking it all wrong.
Ain't meant nothing bad, Levy.
Levy got to be Levy. You don't need nobody messing with him about the white.
I'd be remiss if I didn't point out one of the most widely talked about snubs of these nominations, Delroy Lindo's Force of Nature performance in Da 5 Bloods, a polarizing film that was completely ignored outside of its original score nomination. Alright, let's shift to actress in a leading role. Viola Davis in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Andra Day in The United States vs. Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby in Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand in Nomadland, and Carey Mulligan in Promising Young Woman. With 4 nominations, Viola Davis is now the most nominated black actress of all time. She won the last time she starred in an adaptation of an August Wilson play, Fences, but will she take home a second Oscar, or will Frances McDormand take home a third? I actually think Carey Mulligan is our frontrunner for her fierce yet nuanced turn in Promising Young Woman.
I wanted to be a doctor my whole life. Lately, I've been feeling like I might want to get back into it.
Now let's step behind the camera, directing. Another Round, Thomas Vinterberg. Mank, David Fincher. Minari, Lee Isaac Chung. Nomadland, Chloe Zhao. Promising Young Woman, Emerald Fennell. So this marks the first time that more than one woman has been nominated for Best Director. Chloe Zhao and Emerald Fennell are only the 6th and 7th female nominees for Best Director ever. If either of them wins, and Chloe Zhao is the frontrunner, she will be the second woman to ever win Best Director after Kathryn Bigelow, who won in 2009 for The Hurt Locker. What's more, Zhao is now the first woman of color, and specifically Chinese woman, to be nominated for Best Director. Seeing Thomas Vinterberg recognized by the director's branch was probably my favorite surprise of these nominations. The more international these categories become, the better as far as I'm concerned. It certainly helps when it's for a film as brilliant as Another Round, and it's because of this nomination that I said it's a lock for international feature film. And finally, Best Picture. The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. It's not a bad crop of films to choose from, still I think some of these are much better than others. On that note, I will be doing a video where I briefly review and rank all of these Best Picture nominees. You can see how I did that last year. Nomadland is the frontrunner at the moment and has been for months, but is there enough gas in its tank for this final hill? Especially when films like Judas and the Black Messiah and Minari are building up so much momentum. Or will the Academy resort to their old-fashioned ways and crown a film like The Trial of the Chicago 7? The answers to all these questions and more on Oscar night, April 25th. And those are my thoughts on each category of nominees for the 93rd Academy Awards. One final observation. Ironically, Mank, the film with the most nominations, actually isn't projected to win many of them. Perhaps leading the nominations will be its highest honor. But never count out Hollywood taking a chance to honor a movie about itself. After all, the Oscars are the most grandiose night of people patting themselves on the back. With all that said, I turn it over to you. What nominations were you happy to see? And what films do you feel the Academy snubbed? Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you down there. And stay tuned to Cineflect for more Oscar coverage in the coming weeks. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to Cineflect for video essays, film lists, and more. And click that bell next to the subscribe button if you'd like to be notified anytime I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. For Cineflect, I'm JS Lewis. Until next time, watch something good.